I mentioned on Facebook this morning, I'll just be very brief. God is not surprised by coronavirus. Coronavirus is not new. Keep something in mind. The communist government does not have any foundation in its worldview to honor or care about the weak. Once you reach an age in their perspective where you are now no longer able to contribute to the society up to a certain level, they don't want you around anymore. Because the state is all. Individuals mean nothing. From what I'm reading, I'm not an expert on this, but from what I'm reading, this coronavirus is survivable by anyone. It basically gives you pneumonia. And with proper nutrition and so on and so forth, a healthy person is this is not the dystopian flesh-eating viruses, that we find in all of our movies anymore. Okay? But you see, it actually seems to work pretty well for the communists because it gets rid of the people they want to get rid of anyways in the long run. And so let's not do the panic thing. I mean, that's what media is for the creation of panic. But God knew about this, and God has a purpose, and God has a plan. And wash your hands and be Scottish. Amen. That's right. And what I mean by that, of course, laddies, is keep your distance. Those of you, and I've talked about it before, if you want to get so close and talking to me that I can feel your breath, let alone smell it, you are too close. And with coronavirus, even more than too close. Okay, this becomes assault in that situation. That's right. You stay. You've got your space, and I got my space, and let's just leave it that way. So just wash your hands and rev that immune system and be Scottish. So yeah, God's in control, and I did mention. This world has survived. God has brought his judgments to bear in the past. And I gave some numbers on Facebook. The 1918 Spanish flu, 675,000 in the United States. You run the numbers on that, and given the increase in population, 2.1 million would be the equivalent today. 2.1 million people. And yet, barely 100 years later, if you and I walk down a street and asked anybody what happened in 1918, they have no earthly idea. I don't think. What do you guess? Would 4% even know about World War I? Let alone the flu epidemic that took millions around the world? No. How many people in this audience could tell you when the Black Plague struck? What years? And how many people? What percentages? I think I ran the numbers. What did it say? 373 million in Europe, using today's numbers, is what would be the equivalent of 374. Yeah, of what actually took place at that time. Yeah, there have been things like this in the past. Far worse than anything we're seeing here. Far worse. And most Christians are afraid to deal with the theological reality from our perspective that God was not only caught by surprise, but isn't it interesting? Even our synergistic friends who are constantly emphasizing free will, how do you deal with something like this? Because they'll say, well, when it comes to earthquakes, tsunamis, how about plague? Is God sovereign over that? had God intended to bring the plague in the middle of the 14th century, 1347 to 1350? Major. I mean, it kept coming back, but that's when you had the, half of Europe dies. Did that catch God by surprise? Are you an open theist? I think a lot of Christians are when it comes to practically making application of their theology, because they don't want to deal with the fact that that realm comes from God. God's in control of these things. And I think a lot of people are extremely, extremely uncomfortable about that particular aspect of things. So thought I'd mention that.